It begins in the hour when the world feels thinnest, when city streets turn to rivers of pale sodium light and your room glows with the cold pulse of a phone. You lie on the mattress, staring at that rectangle, a tiny sun whose orbit never ends, while the hum of distant traffic becomes the soundtrack of your heartbeat. Thumb flicks upward. A fingertip drags one image after another across the glass. Faces, poses, bodies, promises. The tension feels physical, the ache seated somewhere between stomach and skin, yet it is not really hunger for skin at all. Carl Jung would have named this restless tide soul hunger. He believed that modern lives, severed from myth and ritual, try to fill their hollow places with sensation. In his notebooks, he wrote that a craving rarely points to the object it seeks. Instead, it points inward, toward a need that language has forgotten. You scroll because the glow speaks in simple grammar. Want, take, fade, repeat. Your nervous system understands that grammar perfectly. A burst of dopamine crowns each swipe like confetti, and for a heartbeat the emptiness recedes. Then the next image arrives, and the ache returns. Listen to the silence for a moment. No music, no notifications, only the soft hiss of conditioned air. Jung called this the voice of the shadow, the region of the psyche where exiled feelings wait. When you treat desire as an enemy, you push it into that basement, but it does not die. It learns new tricks. It returns wearing costumes, sometimes lust, sometimes rage, sometimes a hunger for applause. Tonight it wears the silk of longing. It whispers that a stranger somewhere behind glass can soothe you if only you keep reaching. Imagine pulling the camera back. See yourself from the ceiling, blue light on your cheeks, eyes wide and glassy. The body is present, yet consciousness has drifted miles away, chasing pixels that mimic warmth. Jung warned of this drift. He wrote that when libido, the raw psychic energy, is not anchored in meaningful creation or authentic relationship, it slides into substitution. Sensation becomes a counterfeit sacrament, a ritual without spirit. The soul does not condemn you for partaking, it simply knows the meal is made of air. A notification pops, a message from someone who once made your pulse race. The text is casual, an invitation painted in minimal syllables, yet your heart jolts like a struck bell. You consider replying. You rehearse witty sentences. You picture a door opening, quick entanglement, the illusion of being wanted. Then, perhaps without knowing why, you set the phone face down. The room dims. The ache does not vanish, but it changes texture, less electric, more human. In that hush, another Jungian practice surfaces, active imagination. He taught that when a charged image rises, the task is not to smother it, nor obey it blindly, but to converse with it. So you inhale, close your eyes, and instead of picturing the stranger, you picture the ache itself. What color is it? What age? What memory does it guard? Maybe a childhood afternoon returns, the moment you realized affection could be withdrawn without warning. Maybe a teenage hallway, laughter aimed like darts. The ache carries stories that never found words, and tonight it finally has an audience. The breath you just took was a first gathering of those lost actors. It feels fragile, like holding snow in warm hands, yet fragility is honest. Jung wrote that the meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own weakness. The scrolling screen never permits weakness. It trades it for the mask of control. But the human animal was never meant to live masked so long. When the mask slips, when the ache is seen rather than exiled, a different warmth enters the chest, small but alive. None of this condemns pleasure. Jung did not preach abstinence from life, he urged integration. The libido that surges while you gaze at a photograph can be the same force that writes a poem, designs a shelter, or lifts a child into laughter. Energy is innocent until the ego shackles it to repetition. The task tonight is simple, though not easy. Stay awake within the desire, feel its waves crash, and ask what shore they seek. Outside, a garbage truck groans and clanks. Inside, the phone vibrates once more, but you do not pick it up. You place a palm on your sternum and notice the heart knocking, a steadfast drummer that never demanded an audience. You let that beat be the metronome. You let the silence fill again. Somewhere in the distance of your inner landscape, a door creaks open. The shadow does not lunge. It waits, curious, wondering if this time you will listen instead of scroll. A heartbeat strides forward, and with it a surge of molecules no wider than dust carries a promise of instant relief. Dopamine, norepinephrine, phenethylamine, the bright trio that evolution designed to keep us chasing survival, now floods your bloodstream because your eyes saw an image that hinted at belonging. For a breath or two, the blood feels hot, the chest feels large, and your fingers cannot find the screen fast enough. Scientists can trace every step of that reaction, can map it like weather on a radar, yet even their diagrams cannot explain why the pleasure flickers out so quickly, leaving a darker craving behind. Carl Jung never denied biology. He believed the body is a cathedral where the psyche prays, but he warned that chemistry is only a choir, not the voice of God. The human longing for union begins long before the glands release their spark. The surge you feel is a messenger, not a destination, and it carries news from a deeper chamber. Jung called that deeper chamber the unconscious, a vault of forgotten memories and forbidden feelings. And he insisted that the ego will do almost anything to avoid opening that vault. Chemicals become the perfect accomplices. They rise like a curtain, dazzling and bright, so the audience never sees the stagehands moving props behind the scenes. Imagine the nervous system as a river that once flowed toward fertile valleys of meaning. Modern life poured concrete channels and digital sluice gates across that river. Lust becomes a spillway, an artificial drop that produces noise and spray, just enough spectacle to distract from the fact that the water no longer reaches the fields. Jung understood that when libido cannot irrigate the soul, it cascades over any edge it can find, hungry for height, hungry for gravity. We call the spectacle passion or chemistry or spark, but underneath it the valley stays dry. Stick with the body for a moment. Notice how the mouth waters, how the breathing shifts, how the muscles tense as if preparing to leap. None of that is villainous. It is ancient intelligence. Yet watch how quickly a second chain reaction begins, this one silent and interior. A memory flickers of being ignored at a party 5 years ago, of a parent who praised achievements but never softness, of a friend who vanished without explanation. You do not consciously recall these scenes. They move through the dark like fish under ice. Jung called them complexes, clusters of charged memory that live their own half-lives, occasionally surfacing to seize the helm. When the rush of neurotransmitters opens the gate, a complex may lunge forward, steering desire toward any object that promises to heal the original wound. That is why the phone feels like a lifeline. It is not the device you crave, nor even the bodies behind the images, but the chance to re-script an old injury. The ego says, if someone answers this message, I will finally prove I am desired. The complex whispers, if this touch arrives, I can rewrite the night I was left alone. Neurochemistry pumps its confetti into the bloodstream, and the chase begins. Loud, bright, almost irresistible. Jung would pause here and invite a different experiment. Instead of plunging into the chase, he would ask you to observe the sensation without labeling it good or bad. Close the eyes. See if the heat can widen inside the chest, rather than rush outward. Visualize that heat as a glowing ember, a pure spark of life energy. Now breathe as if stoking a fire, slow, deliberate. The ember glows brighter, yet it does not leap. In this moment, biology bends toward consciousness. The shadow does not vanish, but it stands visible, waiting to be acknowledged rather than obeyed. Neuroscientists call this practice top-down regulation, the prefrontal cortex modulating limbic impulses. Jung called it holding the tension of the opposites. Two languages, same bridge. The primal surge meets reflective awareness, and something unexpected appears between them, a quiet clarity. The body still hums with chemistry, yet the mind senses acres of space around that hum. You are no longer inside a tidal wave. You are standing on a shore watching waves rise and fall. The difference is subtle yet world-changing. Compulsion depends on speed and tunnel vision. Presence thrives on space and curiosity. From this vantage point, you can see that lust is not a dragon to slay, but a river to redirect. The molecules keep swirling, the heart keeps pounding, yet with each breath, you ask a new question. What if this charge is raw creative power waiting for assignment? What poem could it write? What melody could it carve? What conversation could it deepen if given room? Jung believed that when libido finds a channel that serves individuation, the craving transforms into enthusiasm, the Greek word for being filled with the divine. The phone still rests nearby, silent for now. You acknowledge its pull, thank the body for its honest signals, then return attention inward. Somewhere in the chest the ember brightens again, not as hunger this time, but as invitation. The valley waits for water, fertile earth eager for seeds. Chemistry alone can never fill that valley, but consciousness, guiding chemistry, just might. That guiding begins here, in a room lit only by a screen you have not touched for several minutes, in a body that has not betrayed you, in a psyche that still remembers how to grow flowers once the river finds its true course. A morning arrives, and with it, the crisp light of a new notification. The name on the screen is familiar, yet distant. Someone you met once at a gathering where conversation moved like easy music. Overnight, their face has acquired an aura, a glow poured from your own imagination. The message is simple, only a greeting, but your heart leaps as if an entire future has been promised. In this single heartbeat, Jung's theory of projection stands revealed. He taught that we do not see others as they are. We drape them in the colours of our own unclaimed nature. Picture a theatre. The stage is empty and the audience waits in hushed expectation. A bright lamp clicks on, throwing shadows across the back wall. Those shadows look alive, but they come from figures we cannot see, figures hidden behind the curtain. Jung called the hidden figures Anima and Animus, the inner feminine in a man, the inner masculine in a woman, each holding qualities that culture may not permit us to express openly. When these inner partners stay unconscious, they seek expression outward. They climb into the spotlight by hitching themselves to a passing stranger, and we feel enchanted though it is our own missing voice that has begun to sing. Your thumb hovers above the reply button. Before you type, pause and study the feeling that floods the chest. It is soft, hopeful, almost fragrant. Notice how quickly the mind scripts scenes. Shared laughter, evening walks, the warmth of a hand around a mug across a small cafe table. None of these scenes have happened. They bloom from a seed carried by the inner feminine, the Anima, who longs for tenderness, for the freedom to feel without armour. Rather than entering your conscious life as calm acceptance of vulnerability, she chooses a proxy. The message becomes a mirror. You gaze at your own reflection but call it someone else's light. Jung warned that projection is powerful because it feels sacred. The qualities we admire are real, yet we mislabel their source. We tell ourselves that the stranger must be extraordinary, when in truth it is our own disowned wonder knocking at the door. The danger is not in admiration, but in forgetting that the beauty lives first within. As long as Anima or Animus remains outside, desire cannot find resting place. Each romantic surge carries an undertow of panic. I must possess this person, or I lose access to my own radiance. Imagine walking through a crowded boulevard. People drift by like coloured leaves in wind. Suddenly, one face flashes brighter, as if spotlighted by the sun. You feel recognition, though reason offers no explanation. Jung would say the unconscious has chosen its canvas. The qualities you need most, gentleness, creativity, courage, play, appear to gleam from that face. The encounter can become an initiation if awareness wakes in time. Recognize the spark, thank the messenger, then reclaim the qualities as your own. Without that awareness, the spark ignites a wildfire of attachment. You may chase the person, shower them with attention, feel euphoria when they reply, and despair when they do not. The pattern repeats until exhaustion blurs enchantment into resentment. Return to the phone in your hand. Feel the pulse in your fingertips. Instead of writing a clever response, close your eyes and invite the Anima to speak directly. Ask, "What part of me are you trying to reveal?" Perhaps she answers with an image, a memory of painting as a child, colours swirling freely before you learn to fear making mistakes. Perhaps she offers a phrase, "Let yourself be soft." The message reveals that the tenderness you seek is already seeded in the soul, waiting for cultivation. The stranger's greeting simply cracked the shell. In Jung's vision, individuation is the lifelong weaving of conscious and unconscious threads into a single fabric. Projection signals where the weave is torn. Anima and Animus bring news of missing threads, urging repair. When their voice is denied, they grow restless and dramatic, producing intense attraction, jealousy, even obsession. Bring them into dialogue, and the temperature cools. Attraction remains, yet it carries serenity rather than compulsion. You can appreciate another's beauty without forgetting your own. Consider a small exercise. Write the qualities you imagine in the person who texted. Perhaps kindness, quick humour, emotional depth. Then write ways you can embody each quality today, before any meeting occurs. Kindness might be a gentle word to a colleague, humour a playful note to yourself, depth a silent walk beside a river. The list becomes a bridge across projection. You shift from consumer of another's light to cultivator of inner light. Suddenly, the reply to the message feels less urgent, or it feels joyful rather than desperate, because you no longer chase your reflection through someone else's corridors. Evening returns. The sun slips behind rooftops, and the first stars hesitate in the violet sky. You sit by the window, phone silent for now, breathing into the spaciousness that has opened since morning. The chest still glows with warmth, yet it feels rooted, not restless. You understand that every figure who crosses your path can serve as mirror, teacher, or companion, but none can complete the unfinished music inside. That music belongs to the partnership of ego with Anima or Animus, a duet that plays within long before it serenades another heart. Jung compared the soul's journey to alchemy, the transformation of raw ore into shining gold. Projection marks the stage where gold is glimpsed in the crucible, but mistaken for something outside the vessel. Hold the heat a little longer, and the substance clarifies within. The next message may still bring a smile, perhaps even a meeting, but now desire travels a gentler orbit. It seeks resonance, not rescue. In the hush that surrounds this awareness you hear, beneath the distant city sounds, the faint notes of a new melody forming, one that belongs wholly to you, ready to be shared yet no longer traded for validation. Late afternoon sunlight slips through blinds and stripes the wall like the bars of an unseen cage. You sit at your desk, meaning to answer one email, meaning to stretch your legs, meaning to touch reality for a moment, yet the thumb finds the screen once more. A short clip loops, a laugh track echoes. An image flares, then fades. In the time it takes a kettle to boil, you have entered the maze again. Each corridor brighter than the last. Each turn promising an exit that never comes. Carl Jung described this state as psychic possession. A complex rises from the unconscious like a puppeteer, and your hands obey without question. Trigger. Reaction, fleeting relief, familiar guilt. The sequence hums with machine precision. It is not that you lack willpower. It is that an ancient knot inside the psyche has tightened and now directs the show. Jung wrote that a complex behaves like a splinter personality, invested with emotional energy that once belonged to the whole self. When that energy seizes control, the ego drifts to the back seat, watching through fogged glass. Notice how time dissolves. Minutes stretch, then collapse. You scroll, you like, you share, yet memory retains only a blur. This fog is a hallmark of possession. The complex floods the nervous system with stimulation, while the reflective mind goes dim, much like stage lights dazzling the eyes so the backstage crew remains unseen. The pleasure centers cheer, and for a while the body feels alive, yet a quiet hollowness widens under the ribs because consciousness has been evicted from its own house. Jung saw many forms of this spiral. Some patients pushed coins across green felt until dawn. Others drank until nights erased mornings. Still others pursued lovers who mirrored the same wound in endless disguise. The object changed, but the pattern never did. He observed that a complex feeds on repetition. Every cycle refreshes the charge that keeps it alive. The more often you reach for the phone in a trance, the stronger the trance becomes, like footsteps deepening a path through meadow grass until no other trail seems possible. Imagine the complex as a storyteller who insists on one plot only. It whispers. If you scroll a little longer, she will answer. If you watch one more video, the dull ache will soften. If you chase one more fantasy, the loneliness will fade. The promises taste sweet, yet deliver sand. Still, you listen because the voice feels internal, familiar, almost parental. Jung urged his students to treat this voice with respectful suspicion. It carries truth about old pain, but it lacks wisdom about new possibilities. Try an experiment. The next time the urge surges, do nothing for 10 breaths. Do not repress, simply witness. Feel the pulse quicken, the fingers twitch, the mind craft arguments. Within those 10 breaths, the illusion begins to shimmer, like heat waves above asphalt. You see that the promise is mechanical, not personal. It offers comfort, yet knows nothing of your real face, or the yearning lines that map your history. In this small pocket of awareness, the complex loses momentum. Energy that once rushed into the spiral returns to the center where choice lives. Jung called this moment holding the tension. Two forces pull in opposite directions, the well-worn rut of habit and the untamed possibility of conscious response. Stand in that tension, and a spark of creativity appears. Instead of scrolling, you may pick up a sketchbook, step onto a balcony, send a sincere message to a friend, or simply sit, eyes closed, while the heart drums a song older than language. The action matters less than the fact that you chose it. Choice signals the return of sole authority. The illusion spiral often includes shame as its final twist. Shame tells you that falling again proves you are broken, that you will never climb free. Jung offered a kinder map. He believed relapse reveals the power of the pattern, but also the strength of the life force behind it. That force can irrigate art, devotion, invention, once guided by consciousness. Every loop, therefore, becomes feedback, not condemnation. You learn where the seam of awareness tore and you stitch it with patience. Picture the phone on the desk, screen dark, silent for a full minute. A breeze nudges the curtains, stirring dust motes that drift like tiny planets. In the stillness, you sense the complex receding, its voice softer, its outline less defined. It retreats not because it was vanquished, but because it was seen. Nothing dissolves a shadow faster than direct light. In that light, a question surfaces from deep water. What sturdy dream have you postponed while feeding the spiral? Perhaps a book waits half-written, a garden plot lies fallow, a friendship drifts unwatered. The energy reclaimed from one interrupted scroll could flow into those roots. Jung believed that individuation, the full flowering of personality, depends on such redirections. The libido that once fueled the illusion spiral now circles back toward purpose, like a river breaking through an old dam and irrigating dry land downstream. Evening leans against your window, the sky turning indigo, city lights flickering on like slow constellations. You rise, stretch, feel the spine loosen, shoulders drop. The desk remains, the phone remains, but the air around them has changed. It carries a quiet resolve, the scent of a threshold crossed. You know the spiral will beckon again, perhaps an hour from now, perhaps tomorrow. Yet the path is no longer invisible. Footsteps, once automatic, will soften. Choices, once buried, will rise. And in that rising, the complex will hear the gentle click of its locked door opening to fresh wind. The room grows darker, yet inside the chest a soft glow lingers, steady and warm. A lantern carried by the returning traveller of your own awareness. The illusion spiral may circle for years, but each circle traced with consciousness becomes a spiral upward, a slow ascent toward the point where psychic possession transforms into creative sovereignty. Jung would call that point the threshold of the self, the place where the scattered fragments of longing gather and bow to a guiding center that has been waiting, patient and luminous all along. Morning light slips across the floor like a slow tide, pale gold touching the edges of the room. You wake without reaching for the phone. The habit still tugs, but a quieter impulse rises first, the one Jung called the guide of the inner journey. Some traditions name it the psychopomp, the soul's own escort through hidden corridors. It never shouts. It waits for the split second when you choose to listen. Today you do. You sit on the edge of the bed, bare feet against cool boards, and notice breath moving. Air enters, leaves, returns. A silent metronome that belongs to no algorithm. Jung believed that individuation begins the moment consciousness turns from the outer theatre toward the backstage machinery of emotion and symbol. Not isolation, but presence. The task is simple, though not easy. Stay inside the body long enough to hear what the nerves, muscles, and memories want to say. So you place a hand on the sternum and breathe as if polishing glass. The chest expands, softens. Behind closed eyes, the mind projects brief images, yesterday's messages, half-remembered dreams. Instead of following them outward, you invite them inward. Speak, you whisper. At first, there is only static, yet within the static a shape appears. A child holding a paintbrush, colours dripping on shoes. You recognise yourself at 7, before criticism entered the room. The memory glows with tenderness, an ember that never died. Active imagination, Jung wrote, turns this ember into dialogue. Let the child speak. He says the colours were never the problem. Fear of judgment was. He invites you to paint again, not for applause, but for warmth. The suggestion feels risky, almost absurd compared with scrolling, yet something in the solar plexus jumps like a bird uncaged. You promise the child that you will find paper today, perhaps crayons, anything to let colour breathe again. The promise feels ceremonial. Individuation often begins with such small vows. You stand and open a window. City morning smells of distant bakery and exhaust, yet also of motion, possibility. Jung loved the image of fresh air meeting stale rooms. It mirrored psyche meeting unconscious. As breeze enters, you sense the body as space rather than weight, a vessel that carries stories. The old complex that drove last night's spiral is still present, but its volume has lowered. You have given it a chair in the corner rather than the driver's seat. This is the essence of presence. Every part has room, no part holds the keys. Breakfast becomes a practice rather than a task. You taste the grain, the fruit, the tea with clear attention, naming textures aloud in your mind. Sweet, cool, bright. Jung saw simple sensation as a bridge to the feeling function. One of 4 he outlined, along with thinking, intuition, and sensation itself. In many who chase compulsive pleasure, the feeling function hides, exiled by earlier wounds. By naming flavors, you invite that function to return, subtle but loyal, like a friend long ignored. Later, walking to work or study, you leave earbuds pocketed. Street sounds form an accidental symphony. Bus brakes, bicycle bells, snippets of conversation. Each sound arrives, then departs, yet none demand pursuit. This passing parade mirrors the stream of thought during meditation. Jung taught that observing inner content without attachment grows the reflective center he called the self. The self is not an ideal persona. It is the organizing principle that loves every orphaned emotion, even lust and rage, because each carries energy needed for wholeness. As you walk, you sense that center quietly sifting impressions, keeping what nourishes, letting the rest drift like leaves in a gutter. Workday tasks unfold, but unlike earlier days, you pause whenever tension spikes. Instead of flinching from the pulse of desire or irritation, you name it, feel it, breathe once, and decide. Sometimes you choose a stretch, sometimes a sigh, sometimes a drink of water. Each decision marks a stitch in the torn fabric between awareness and action. Jung compared such moments to hammer blows on heated metal, forging a blade from raw ore. Individuation is craftsmanship, patient and rhythmic. Mid-afternoon, a colleague cracks a joke and laughter spills from you, surprising in its ease. The anima within delights. Her tenderness now moves through face and voice rather than hiding behind a stranger's text. Projection retracts like a tide, revealing wet sand where new footprints can form. You thank the colleague, not with flattery, but with genuine warmth, and the exchange feels crisp, uncluttered by agenda. Jung would call this a glimpse of transference healed. Energy once tangled in fantasy now feeds authentic connection. Evening returns, yet tonight the room does not feel like a trap. The phone rests within reach, but you set a brush and a plate of colour beside it. Paperweights. You light a small candle, not for romance, but for ritual, signalling to the unconscious that creative work is sacred. Brush meets colour, colour meets paper, and the 7-year-old smiles from somewhere just behind your heartbeat. Minutes stretch. They sparkle rather than blur. You notice how the same energy that fueled last week's scroll now pulls in the wrist, flows through pigment, becomes shape and shade. Jung called this sublimation. Not repression, but redirection of libido toward art, love, service, meaning. When the painting rests to dry, you sit again in stillness. Lust has not vanished. It sits peacefully among other guests at the banquet of sensation. It no longer clangs for attention because it has been offered a seat, a voice, and new choreography. The shadow stands nearby, arms crossed, yet eyes soft, honoured by your willingness to feel. Breath rises, falls. In that gentle motion, you sense the quiet hum of a life turning inward to grow outward, roots reaching soil rather than skimming concrete. The practice will falter some days, but tonight the candle burns steady, a beacon that rounds the corner of longing into the long road of becoming whole. Night settles like velvet across the city, soft and resonant. Yet tonight, the dark feels expansive rather than heavy. A quiet radiance lingers in the space where colour now dries on paper, the candle's ember still glowing in its pool of wax. You study the small painting, surprised by how its hues echo emotions you could never phrase. Jung wrote that psyche speaks first in images. To see those images outside the skin is to glimpse the language of the soul. What began as a simple brushstroke now stands as proof that the energy once flung outward in longing can arc inward and return as beauty. Pick up the canvas, hold it at arm's length. Notice how the shapes resolve then blur, how each brush mark carries something unsaid yet palpable. This is libido transfigured, the raw fire of desire cooled to a creative glow. Jung believed such transformation marks the turning point of individuation, where eros ceases to chase completion through possession and begins to birth new forms. The libido has not been tamed or censored. It has remembered its true vocation, to animate life with meaning. A soft vibration breaks the hush. The phone lights up with a message from the same acquaintance, whose greeting once ignited restless yearning. You smile, set the canvas down, and read. The pulse quickens, yes, but the movement is tempered, grounded. Projection has receded like twilight mist, revealing the person as they are, human, curious, imperfect. You respond with warmth, not urgency. The Anima sits beside you, no longer hitchhiking on another's presence. She participates in the dialogue, lending gentle humour, a question that invites depth. Jung called this state conjunctio, the mystical union of opposites within, which frees the outer relationship to dance without chains. Later you step onto the balcony, stars pricking the sky's dark fabric. Cool air lifts the hair from your forehead. For years these stars shone unseen, your gaze glued to backlit glass. Now they feel like witnesses to a secret ceremony. Jung often spoke of synchronicity, moments when inner shift and outer event mirror each other with uncanny resonance. A sudden meteoric streak scores the sky, and you feel a small thrill, as if the cosmos nods to the turning of an invisible gear within your chest. Memory wanders back through the day, the taste of breakfast, the laughter with a colleague, the hush during painting. Each moment seems threaded by an unseen filament, delicate yet strong. Jung would say the self has begun weaving its pattern, an architecture that gathers fragments into a living mandala. No part of you is left outside the circle. Even the complex that once possessed you now feels less like an enemy and more like a child needing steady hands. Feel into the body. Sensations ripple gently, the weight of legs, the rise of breath, the quiet hum behind the sternum. Desire is present, but it no longer drums for immediate release. It resonates like cello strings, deep and full, capable of carrying melody rather than a single piercing note. You realize that genuine intimacy, whether with art, person, or planet, asks for this spacious tone. It cannot root in frantic soil. It unfolds where presence has tilled patience. Turning from the rail, you notice a journal on the table. You open it to a blank page and write a line. Tonight the fire sat with me and told stories instead of burning down the house. The sentence surprises you, but it rings true. Jung encouraged such spontaneous writing, letting the unconscious speak in metaphor. Each entry becomes both map and artifact, tracing the slow migration from fragmentation to inner congress. Before sleep, you stand in front of a mirror. Not to critique or to pose, simply to witness. The eyes looking back carry an unfamiliar softness. You lift a palm, press it to the glass, and recall Jung's insight that the face we show the world, the persona, must remain flexible lest it crack under contradiction. Tonight the persona feels transparent. Behind it you glimpse a steady light that is neither anxious nor ashamed. You lower the hand and feel gratitude rise, quiet as dew. Sliding into bed, you place the phone face down on the nightstand, candle extinguished, darkness complete. Yet within the dark, a subtle luminosity abides, as if the psyche itself emits low light. Jung suggested that dreams emerging after such inner work often carry instructive symbolism. You invite them. Whatever scenes unfold behind closed lids, oceans, strangers, forgotten streets, you vow to greet them as teachers, not riddles to escape. Sleep drifts near, the boundary between waking and dream porous. In that threshold, you sense the rich soil of the unconscious receiving today's experiences, like fallen petals, breaking them down, feeding future growth. Somewhere, a distant siren wails, then fades. A dog barks twice. These sounds reach you but cannot jar the newfound equilibrium. You recognize in this calm the fruit of turning libido toward expression and reflection. It is not the calm of emptiness. It is the calm of fullness, a cup no longer cracked. Tomorrow will bring triggers, billboards, screens, sudden pangs, but tonight demonstrates that craving can be cupped, warmed, and poured into creation. Jung compared such mastery to the alchemist, transforming base metal into gold. Gold in alchemical texts symbolized consciousness, fused with matter, spirit recognized in the everyday. The small painting drying in the other room, the text exchange that breathed instead of seized, the journal line glowing on the page, each is a fleck of that gold. You exhale once, deep and slow, and feel the breath ripple all the way to your toes. The psyche settles as a snow globe after swirl, flakes drifting to rest. Somewhere inside, a voice once frantic now whispers a single word, home. With that word circling like a lullaby, you slip beneath the surface of thought, trusting that wholeness, once glimpsed, never fully departs. It waits, patient as stars.